What's the single act that derailed your entire life? At 25, I was a college dropout managing a failing electronics store. Every day felt like a reminder of my failure. I was smart, but I had no piece of paper to prove it. So, in a moment of sheer desperation, I did something that would define my entire adult life. I spent $500 on a high-quality Forge engineering degree from a top university. It looked perfect, right down to the embossed seal. It got me in the door at a major construction firm. I started at the bottom, but I worked my tail off. Turns out, I was good at it. Really good. I absorbed everything, stayed late, and climbed the ladder. Over the next 15 years, I built a life I'd only dreamed of. I became a senior project manager, made well over 6 figures, bought a beautiful home, and married an amazing woman who thought I was the man I pretended to be. Every single day was a tightrope walk. Every compliment felt like a lie. I lived with a knot in my stomach, waiting for the inevitable. The end came because of an award. Our firm was up for a huge national prize. It triggered a deep background audit on all senior staff. It was a third-party company, meticulous and unforgiving. A single phone call to the university registrar was all it took. I was called into HR and fired on the spot for fraud. The state board blacklisted me permanently. My wife, bless her heart, couldn't look at me. The man she married didn't exist. She left last month. Now I'm just a guy in an empty house I can't afford, with a career that was never really mine. For 20 years, I had it all, even if it didn't look like much from the outside. I was a mechanic, my hands were always dirty, but I had a wife I adored, 2 great kids, and a small house that we owned free and clear. We were happy. It was a simple, safe life. Then I bought a scratch-off ticket with the change from my coffee. It was for $250,000. It felt like a miracle. At first, it was. We paid off the last of our debts, set aside college money, and I took $1,000 to the casino to celebrate. I'd never been before. I won a few $100 on blackjack, and the feeling was electric. It wasn't about the money. It was the rush, the feeling of being a winner. It started small. I'd go back with a few hundred, telling my wife I was working late. Soon, I was chasing losses, dipping into the lottery winnings. When that was gone, I emptied our joint savings, convinced I could win it all back in one big hand. Then came the secret loans, and finally a second mortgage on the house we'd worked our whole lives for. My wife found the foreclosure notice taped to our front door. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was just a complete, hollowed-out emptiness. That night, she learned everything. The lottery money, our savings, our home, all gone. She filed for divorce the next week and took the kids. I traded a happy life for a handful of plastic chips, and now I have neither. Life in a small town is simple. I was 26, engaged to the girl I'd loved since I was 16, and was on track to take over my dad's hardware store. Everyone knew me, and everyone liked me. I had my whole life mapped out, and it was a good one. It all came undone in the span of about 10 minutes. It was my bachelor party. My friends and my fiancé all begged me to get a taxi. Don't be an idiot, they said. But I was drunk, arrogant, and invincible. I waved them off, insisting I was fine. I wasn't. 5 blocks from my house, I blew through a stop sign and smashed into the side of a sedan. The woman I hit was Mrs. Gable, the sweet old town librarian who used to read to me in story hour when I was a kid. She survived, but her spine didn't. She's been in a wheelchair ever since. I got a felony DUI probation and a lifetime of court-ordered restitution payments, but the real sentence is living here. My fiancé left, my friends vanished, and my family name is mud. But that's not the worst part. Mrs. Gable lives 2 streets over. Every single day I see her. I see her son struggling to get her wheelchair up the ramp they had to build onto her porch. I see the empty look in her eyes when she passes by. There's no escape. One stupid, selfish decision didn't just ruin my life. It shattered hers. And I have to live with that reminder right outside my window until the day I die. I had the kind of life people put on Instagram. A wife I loved, 2 great kids, and a beautiful home. My wife's family was my family, especially her younger sister, Jenna. She was always over at our house, the cool aunt to my kids and a best friend to my wife. Our lives were completely intertwined. When Jenna went through a nasty breakup, she started leaning on me for support. Late-night talks turned into something else. One night, it crossed a line, and that one mistake snowballed into a secret year-long affair happening right under my wife's nose. I was consumed by guilt, deleting texts, covering my tracks, and living in a constant state of panic. Then came my 35th birthday party. The house was full of family and friends. My wife was so happy. She connected her phone to our big living room speaker to put on a playlist. A moment later, the music stopped. A robotic voice boomed through the silent room. New message from Genesis. I can't stop thinking about last night. When is everyone leaving so I can have the real party with you? You could have heard a pin drop. My wife's face just collapsed. It wasn't just my marriage that ended in that second. I had detonated a bomb in the center of our entire family. The divorce was just the beginning. I lost my kids' respect, my home, and the love of every single person who had once been my support system. All for a secret I wasn't even clever enough to keep. I was just a regular guy in my mid-20s, a little soft around the edges and insecure about it. I started hitting the gym, but my progress felt painfully slow compared to the walking mountains of muscle around me. One of them, an older guy, told me there was a shortcut. He was right, and it was the worst decision of my life. The first cycle of steroids was like a miracle. I packed on 20 pounds of muscle in a few months. I felt invincible powerful, and for the first time, people looked at me with respect. That feeling became a drug. For the next 10 years, my life revolved around my next injection. I spent thousands, lied to my family, and my personality twisted into something ugly and aggressive. The roid rage was real. I pushed everyone away who cared about me. The bill came due when I was 36. It started with my joints grinding, then a torn tendon from just lifting a box. The grand finale was a heart attack. The doctors were blunt. A decade of steroid abuse had ravaged my body. My heart was weak, my organs were stressed, and my connective tissues were shot. I had to stop cold turkey. The gym god physique I'd built vanished in months, leaving behind loose skin. But the damage was done. I'm 38 now, but I look 50. The collagen is gone from my face. I'm in constant pain, and I can't even play with my nephew in the yard without my knees screaming. I sacrificed my health for a body that I couldn't even keep, and now I'm paying the price for it every single day. I was the bookkeeper for a small family-owned company for 15 years. My boss was a good man who treated me like family. As a single mom, my entire world revolved around my daughter, a gifted competitive figure skater. But her talent was expensive. The cost of coaching, costumes, and travel was a constant, suffocating weight. When she qualified for nationals, I knew I couldn't afford it. In a moment of pure panic, I told myself I would just borrow the money. I created a fake vendor in the accounting system and wired $5,000 to myself, promising I'd pay it back. I never did. The first time was terrifying, but it got easier. That one loan turned into a 2-year habit of siphoning off funds whenever we were in a pinch. It grew to over $80,000. The end came when my boss's son, armed with a new business degree, decided to upgrade our accounting software. The new system instantly flagged the fake vendor and the string of payments. My boss called me into his office. He didn't yell. He just slid a printout across the desk with a look of deep personal betrayal and asked, "What?" I confessed everything right there. I was arrested at my desk. I served 18 months for embezzlement. Now, with a felony record, the only job I can get is cleaning motel rooms for minimum wage. But that's not the real ruin. My daughter, ashamed and horrified, lives with her aunt now. She barely speaks to me. I stole to give her a dream, and in the process, I destroyed her life and lost her forever. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. I was lonely, and I craved the kind of sympathy and attention that people gave to my friend who had a chronic illness. So I started small. A post about a debilitating migraine got me a dozen caring messages. It felt good. Too good. That small lie metastasized. I invented a complex, undiagnosed autoimmune disease. I lived in online support groups, expertly weaving stories about my symptoms, my fear, my bravery. My family fretted over me. My boyfriend became my devoted caretaker. People even sent me money for medical bills. For the first time, I felt seen. I was the star of my own tragic opera. The curtain fell when a woman from one of my groups, a real sufferer, noticed my stories didn't add up. She found my personal Instagram, full of pictures of me on hikes and at parties on days I claimed I was bedridden. She exposed me with a mountain of screenshots. My phone blew up. My boyfriend looked at me with pure disgust and walked out. My family's trust in me was completely obliterated. I had never been more alone. Then the real punchline. 6 months later, I started getting dizzy. My legs felt like they were filled with lead. I dismissed it as guilt. But it got worse. I finally saw a neurologist, and after a series of tests, he gave me the diagnosis, multiple sclerosis, a real, incurable disease. But when I tried to tell my family, they just looked at me with tired, empty eyes. They didn't believe me. I had faked a tragedy for so long that when a real one struck, I had to face it completely alone. I've had a crippling phobia of dentists since I was a kid. Not just dislike, but pure, heart-pounding terror. So when a dull ache started in one of my back molars during my sophomore year of college, I did what I always did. I ignored it. I told myself it would go away. I chewed on the other side of my mouth, loaded up on ibuprofen, and pushed through the pain. The ache didn't go away. It turned into a hot, throbbing pulse that radiated up into my ear and down my neck. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My grades plummeted because the pain made it impossible to concentrate. My jaw started to swell, but my phobia was stronger than my common sense. I was so terrified of a dentist chair that I chose to live in agony. I woke up one morning feeling like my head was on fire. My face was so swollen I could barely open one eye, and I was shivering uncontrollably. My roommate took one look at me and called an ambulance. In the ER, they told me the infection from my tooth had spread into the tissues of my neck and chest. It was a life-threatening condition called Ludwig's angina, and it was constricting my airway. I was rushed into emergency surgery. I survived, but the infection had eaten away a part of my jawbone, which they had to remove. The surgery severed a facial nerve, leaving the left side of my mouth permanently drooping. I had to drop out of school to recover, and now I'm saddled with tens of thousands in medical debt, all because I was too scared to deal with a simple cavity. My fear didn't save me from the pain. It just made the consequences permanent. Her name was Chloe, and she was it for me. We were together for 2 years, and they were the best 2 years of my life. We were talking about rings, about kids, about growing old. It was real. Then she got a massive promotion and a dream job offer in a city on the other side of the country. We made a plan, a year of long distance, and then I'd move to join her. The night before she left, as we lay in bed surrounded by our packed boxes, I was hit by a tidal wave of pure, paralyzing panic. The fear of the move, of leaving my hometown, of the sheer finality of it all, was suffocating. Instead of being a man and talking to her, I waited until she fell asleep. Then I packed a bag, left my key on the counter, walked out, and drove away. I blocked her number and all of her socials before the sun came up. I just vanished. The last 5 years have been a masterclass in regret. Every date I went on, every quiet night alone, was just a reminder of the monumental mistake I'd made. A few weeks ago, I finally broke my own rule. I typed her name into Google. The first result was a wedding announcement from a local paper in her new city. There's a picture of her, smiling and happier than I'd ever seen her, standing next to her new husband. Seeing that photo felt like a punch to the gut. All the hazy what-if scenarios in my head collapsed into one cold, hard reality. She moved on, and I'm still here, stuck in the exact moment I chose to ruin my own life. I didn't just lose the love of my life, I threw her away in a fit of cowardice, and now I have to live with the ghost of the happiness I abandoned. I hated my boss, Mr. Harrison. He was a quiet, old-school guy who seemed to live only to criticize my work. In my 24-year-old mind, he wasn't a person. He was a dream-killing corporate robot. After he tore apart a project I'd poured my soul into, I went home, had a few beers, and wrote a scathing post about him on an anonymous blog. I called him Mr. Harshman and mocked everything from his cheap suits to his lack of a soul. I included enough specific details that anyone at work would know who I meant. I sent the link to a couple of work friends for a laugh. A week later, I walked into the office to find people crying. Mr. Harrison had suffered a sudden, fatal aneurysm over the weekend. The news hit me like a physical blow. The guilt was immediate and suffocating. At the funeral, I stood in the back, trying to be invisible. Mr. Harrison's daughter gave a heartbreaking eulogy about how her father was a shy, kind man who had been caring for her mother through a long battle with cancer. It was at that moment that my phone buzzed. A coworker had reshared the link to my blog post in our office group chat with a caption, "OMG, look at this insane timing." A quiet ripple went through the room. I watched in absolute horror as, one by one, my colleagues looked down at their phones, their faces slowly shifting from grief to disgust as they looked up and stared directly at me. My anonymous rant was no longer anonymous. I was fired the next day, but that was the least of it. My name is poison in my industry now. My lasting legacy, the thing I will always be known for, is publicly mocking a good man who was privately suffering. And my cruel, stupid words were the last impression he left on the people he worked with. I can never take that back.